Actually, I don't think I've ever gotten in trouble for that. The R word is
we
like
totally
almost immediate.
Use the phrase "kill that motherfucker."
Yeah, we use that all the time.
And we have never had an issue. Keep in mind, we record with Monk very regularly in our gaming, so
yeah. Well, I have a perfect replacement for the R word. I'll just say, my players.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Look, shut up.
Oh, man.
Okay. As you know, is one of my players.
Right. Okay, cool beans. So, let's get this started. Let's do it live. Let's go.
Everybody, get into it. Getting stupid. Let's get my players in here. Let's get.
Okay. All right. Okay. So if nobody. So get my players is a replacement for the R word, ladies and gentlemen. Just so you know. What's going on, people? This is my cool kid and
Nightstorm.
Yes, and we have a special guest who's currently eating turkey wings or turkey or something like that. Nightstorm, introduce this person.
So this is my friend GettoFabulous Lord Fresh. He is the predominant GM gaming master for my Friday and Saturday tabletop group. And because Mike here has shown some interest in tabletop-ing and such, I figured he would be an interesting first guest for the root idea, and we could get him in here and have some thoughts and some interesting discussions.
Sure.
GettoFab, welcome. What's going on?
Well, let me see. Right now, I'm just finally kind of getting back into the swing of things from the Thanksgiving weekend.
Yep.
Which mostly means I didn't do jack squat today.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, I hope everybody had a fantastic holiday if you celebrate it. If not, well, you're not American enough.
Exactly. Eat more turkey. No, I'm just kidding. I didn't really. We're not a turkey people for so many different reasons. I think it's a little overweighted, but more of a ham man. But anyway, go ahead.
Oh, actually, our family. Well, we do both, but our family has their loyalties more towards ham.
Oh, it's a good family.
Confess.
It's good upbringing.
Oh, yeah. That's right. And
I'm still trying to convince my family to do a goose one year.
Ooh.
I would like to have a Christmas goose one day myself.
Oh, a Christmas goose. That would be nice.
Yeah, Christmas goose. I've never actually had goose. I've had duck, but I know that, as far as I understand, goose is like duck, but more so also it is gamey, if I understand correctly.
I have no idea.
But, yeah. One day I will take that Pepsi plunge and we shall see what I think. But until then, so hopefully everyone had a pleasant Thanksgiving. The holiday season has officially started. So part one of the trilogy has arrived.
So Bud, why don't you give us a little bit of a background on your GMing experience?
Oh, wait! Before we get to the serious stuff, has anybody bought anything for like Black Friday or Cyber Monday or any of this other shit? Because I bought like one book off of Amazon. It was like for drawing cute things, and I plan on giving it to my like niece or nephew or something like that. But
there you go.
Yeah. What about y'all?
In my case, as far as Black Friday, no, I'm already ahead of the curve on games, and by that I mean I just like for my nieces and nephews and whatnot, and cousins, I'm just like, I'll just throw money and you guys figure out what to buy with it.
Nice. Okay. What about you, Nightstorm?
I bought MechWarrior 5 Clans with my stuff, and so that ended up working out pretty nicely. Because that was on sale.
Cool.
That's not completely true. I did actually hit up a disc replay and got some movies.
Oh.
Because I'm always adding to my so Mike, you understand what a DAS or a NAS are?
Yeah. NAS is it's for like a server hard drive or something like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I have one of those, and I have a DAS, which is basically same idea, but it's not network. It's just a hub.
Yeah.
And I have a Plex server.
Oh yeah. You dropped that. Yeah. You dropped that in the Discord. Cool. I didn't actually look at it, but yeah.
So it is
changing.
Yeah, it's like I first got into that. I first learned about them last year, or maybe even 2 years ago. Originally, I was trying to get Jellyfin to work, but Plex won because I got to work first.
Yeah,
but
I have my own Plex server. It's fucking amazing. I wish we could be sponsored. But anyway, Plex, if you want to sponsor us, dude, totally. Anyway, my own Plex server is just like a whole bunch of feel good movies and stuff I enjoy having in the background, and I usually just pull that up on my my iPad and just work away during the day. But I have a difficult time with the file structure. Maybe I'll ask for some points later. But yeah, keep going.
Yeah, because I had to figure it out. What one thing at a time, one 4-letter word at a time.
Okay.
And thing is first I gathered from my friends, any movies that they wanted, on there, so I'd rip them, and then I would, TV shows, movies, I'd rip them, and now they're on there, and then I worked on my own. Right now, there's over 500 movies on this Plex. Most of them are mine, but and it also has, on top of that, it has audiobooks, and some of those are ones that I just ripped when I would get from the library, for example. Or others, there's a program I found that can convert the Audible format, was it .AAC? Mm-hmm. You can convert that to other file formats, therefore you don't have to use Audible.
Oh, nice.
So so I do that. Granted, it's it's my stuff, so but it's always so interesting to people. But I also have my music on there. I also have audio dramas. I also have I also have a separate one for professional wrestling pay-per-views and UFC pay-per-views, in order by date and everything. It's marvelous, and part of the idea is I do it to save people money in the long run.
Yeah.
And of course, if they're just hey, do you have this? And I could be yes, or I could be no, but give me a second.
Okay.
And look at that! There it is now.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But it's all in how you name it. There's different ways people name them. I just know I got the file system that's worked for me.
Yeah.
To work, and then it just scoops up all the metadata, right from the internet.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Okay.
But, yeah. So but it's sometimes. So every time I go to a half price books, or I go to a disc replay, or shudder to think if I had just gotten into this before Redbox literally went belly up this year.
Yeah.
I could have just rented movies, ripped them, returned them, and now everybody has that movie on Plex.
Yeah.
I mean, there were so many Redboxes in at least my area where people had just ripped them open and just stolen the movies.
Jesus Christ.
Mm-hmm. Well, mostly
hobo shit. Okay, go ahead.
Mostly on the west side, because they were all going defunct anyway.
West side? I'm sorry. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. All right. Well, enough with the nice pleasantries and goofy stuff. So
yeah, fuck y'all.
Yeah. Yeah, fuck all the nice shit. Okay, Nightstorm, I interrupted you. You were going to ask GettoFab something. Go for it.
What do you want us to call you?
I'm going to call him GettoFab. It's the truncated version.
GettoFab works.
Okay.
Yeah, GettoFab works.
Okay.
You can call me G-Dog if you're into the brevity thing.
Not doing G-Dog.
I'm pretty partial to Lorch Fresh.
Lord.
So okay. Let's give a little bit of context here. Long time ago, in another lifetime,
in a galaxy far, far away,
we all put our names into a pimp name generator.
Yeah.
And mine was Vampiro Numero Uno.
No, that was your luchador name.
That was my luchador name.
And also, you just kept clicking it; it'll generate new names. You were Dr. D. Hutchinson Silk.
Dr. D. Hutchinson Silk. Okay.
Dr.
D. Thank you for that.
That sounds ridiculous. What kind of pimp name has that? You can't put that on a card or smack somebody and then walk away and say, "My name is Dr. D. Hutchinson Silk, bitch." Like nobody says that, but okay.
I mean, is that any lamer sounding than I'm Wayne Brady, bitch?
No, Wayne Brady has cachet, man. Come on.
The dude looks and acts like very normal.
No, he's fine.
Normal.
Those are the most dangerous. Let me tell you.
You're not wrong.
There you go.
Well, that was the joke about the sketch. You see.
Okay. Anyway, let's not.
So why don't you give us a short rundown on your background as GM, how you get started, what your prominent games were, and how you've evolved over the past 20 plus years.
Well, at least I don't know how things work today, but a lot of times role-playing games was something that someone kind of brought you into it. Because, maybe you just heard about it, or maybe they told you about it, and now you're interested. So then you join a group, and, you assimilate into their circle, and you start to learn the ins and outs and, all that stuff. So usually, of course, someone else is the game master because they've been through this, life cycle process, what have you themselves, but now they're further ahead. That said, role-playing games exist in the world of books. Okay, as of Dungeons and Dragons Beyond, I think it's called. Maybe that's going to be changing, but generally it lives in the world of books, which means someone could just buy the books and start, without, any prior experience in theory. But that's traditionally, it's like you go to a friendly local game shop, and you might, sit in on a group, and you become part of that circle, and you start playing, along with the games, and it's just like any other friend group where you eventually become one of the guys, and you eventually get a little more, people trust you more as a person, blah, 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 and you get more clout, get more, status, and eventually, a new guy comes along and whatnot, but eventually, maybe, just maybe, people might entrust you with running the game. So, it's, how I say it, so, like, the earliest gaming experiences I ever had for tabletop role-playing games of any kind that I can remember. It's back, probably like late 90s, early 2000s. I have a cousin who was into them. And he still is a tabletop gamer, and I think he plays a little bit of role-playing games, but he's more like board games, card games. He even designs his own.
Oh, okay.
But he just whipped something up.
He just whipped up a tabletop and invited you or something? Or
because we were going to a family reunion in Indianapolis, and we were at a hotel, and to pass the time, I forget exactly what we were doing, but it was like modern day, and we're using modern equipment and whatnot. There's only so much in the way of stats and only so much in the way of numbers and dice, but he just kind of whipped something up and just went with the way you usually run a game and just kind of improvised the mechanics of the game.
Okay.
The rules.
Yeah.
And, that first time I played it, I was fascinated.
Okay, so let me bogart the conversation for a second. I'm just curious because, like like whenever you have whenever you're talking about like he just whipped something up, was it just sort of like an interactive like group storytelling mode, or like you have to understand I have like no experience whatsoever with like tabletop stuff. Like I've seen it, and I've heard it and have heard people talk about it, but I don't know really what's going on.
Okay, well, let's see. I gather from this server, this is very video game based.
Yeah, basically.
So of course you're familiar with role playing games in the video game sense.
Yeah, RPG, yeah.
Yeah. So you start with that concept. Why is it called a role-playing game? Where is that, obviously, it comes from tabletop games. You know where this is going. But how so? So, like, what makes it a role-playing game? Things like advancement, where, you start off at one, plinth of power. You have these abilities. You have these, these stats. You have this equipment. You face these enemies. As you go on, you acquire, more resources. You acquire superior equipment. You gain new abilities. Your abilities grow stronger. You become more capable over time. All of that dates back to like Dungeons and Dragons and other such things. In both the Western and the Japanese traditions, so role-playing games, they start off in tabletop because, as all games, not all games, there's things like parlor games and whatnot, but as like those kind of games, they started off in tabletop. It's analog, right?
Yeah.
So you think like when you play a role-playing game, now Western RPGs nowadays, they're first person primarily, whereas, you have that, whereas with Japanese, RPGs, JRPGs, JARPGs, you generally play them where, there's two conceptions, I think, but most of it boils down to third person, and I think for many people, they often think of like the 90s and the 32-bit and 16-bit eras where things were isometric. Mm-hmm. And but it's like you're moving around your character and everything. Well, that's an emulation of sorts of the tabletop experience where you have a figure, a little miniature.
Yeah.
And the thing is that role-playing games trace their lineage mostly back to miniatures games. I believe in the first episode, Lee was telling you about Warhammer 40K. And that, of course, is a miniatures game. That's the core product of everything. There's books, there's video games, there's all this.
There's basically a setting behind all of it, and then you just sort of like run away with this ability to grow a character within a specific role, is what you're saying.
Kind of. Because the thing is that with miniatures games, you assemble an army of some sort, and you have these units, but there's nothing, you don't really have any personal investment in them as who they are. Mm-hmm. They're not making any personal choices. It's just simply, in this scenario, like here's the for example, because miniatures games started off as historical scenarios. Because originally, these were games being literally played to teach strategy for Prussian army officers.
Yeah.
And of course, they would take like historical battles that would be set up with miniature soldiers and miniature terrain and everything, and they're being taught strategy. And they were rolling dice. They had rules.
Yeah.
And the thing is that, so you take that idea, and then you take the idea of how every one of them has context. Like, what is why are we fighting? What are these two or more sides doing?
Yeah.
And what is the goal? Well, take that idea, and now you only have one piece. And there's the referee as it was back then. Well, as it became the dungeon master for flavor purposes in Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
He now has enemies and everything. The goal in these games was not really about fighting a battle. The goal was, it was kind of board game-ish of sorts, where it's like, oh, you're going to go into this dungeon, you're going to try to get the treasure and leave. But in the way, there's traps, there could be riddles, there could be puzzles, there could be monsters. There
could be other player characters.
Potentially, that's a little bit outside of the technical scope of the game, but it is a thing because of free will. And so you take that idea where it's like it's a miniatures game, but has a slightly different basis than it did before. And now you're starting to creep into the world of role-playing games because, where you assemble an army in 40K, you assemble a team in War Mahords or in BattleTech.
Yeah.
You're doing a similar idea, but now it's like, okay, well, this unit, my unit, is a magic user. I cast spells. I can do things that are kind of warp reality. Whereas this guy, he's a fighter. He's the guy that go up. He has more hit. He could take more hits than me. He's better at hitting things than me. And he can go up and, if we got to get into a fight, he's the one to do it. And then we try to back him up.
Okay.
So the thing is, in the old days, like in the mid 70s, these games they're not quite as narrative in the way we think of them today. Back then, because when you're online, you're playing with everybody, and you kind of share, and you reflect on your war stories afterwards of like the crazy shit that happened.
Yeah. Okay.
Miniatures games are like that.
Okay.
We can certainly tell you about the last one we played.
Okay.
Where it's like there was a context to it, but then there was tension because of like what the enemy's trying to do versus what we're trying to do. And it's like there's no the GM isn't writing a story. It's more like the story is what happened. It's a history, really. Rather than a story. So originally, that's the idea of role-playing games, is that, okay, we have a context, like, okay, our characters, we're playing this module or something that the GM cooked up himself or herself, we're inclusive. But it's like we have our reason to be here in this dungeon, and obviously it's not always literally dungeon. Maybe you're going up this keep, maybe you're going into this cave, you're going into this dragon's lair, you're whatever, and but you have a context, and then you're trying to achieve your goal, and then there's all the different things that happen. But the thing is that because you have your abilities, and your characters will have their own motivations and behaviors. For example, in old D&D, you'd be like, okay, my character is lawful, so he adheres to these certain behaviors. This character is chaotic. He would adhere to those behaviors. We have to play that into our decisions. We can't always play completely objectively and rationally. Sometimes we have to make choices that are appropriate to the way our character is built.
So you have to play the role. Yeah.
Exactly. And so
there is a non-zero amount of acting that goes on, and it's important to sometimes it's okay to quote metagame where I know what this enemy does, but I'm not going to play like I know what this enemy does, or maybe sometimes you may know this is a better tactical decision, but maybe you realize hey, my character would never see this.
Yeah.
No, I only know this because I've been in enough scenarios to know that this is how it is.
Yeah.
So it can sometimes be difficult for new players to separate themselves a little bit from their character. It's not to say that you have to play a completely different character than who you are, but it's typically good to try to diverge from who you are a little bit, because it is, after all, a fantasy.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Go ahead.
Moment. So, take those ideas. Role-playing games eventually developed a sense of story to them, because they have that whole context. Because when you play in a given module, your characters have to be motivated on some level to do whatever they're going out to do. And then, of course, as people wrote more modules, you eventually had ones like Ravenloft, where there's a lot of story. And basically, you have the tabletop role-playing equivalent of cutscenes, where it's just whole slices of narrative that the GM just narrates, and and you only have so much interaction with that, and then you continue. And there's times where it's not always about getting the gold, whatnot, so to speak. It's like you have so that evolved further on. So now you have, with role-playing games, you'll have people that are basically trying to get their theater kid, mojo going.
Yeah.
You have other people that are just like, I can put myself in the headspace of the character, but I'm not going to put on any voices. I'm just going to make decisions as this character. It takes, different people have different approaches.
Yeah.
End effect is that, like with a video game, the CPU is the one that's determining all the different things that are going on, and then you're just pressing buttons and making choices here and choices there based on basically some level of pre-selection.
Yeah.
Whereas here, it's a lot more fluid, and a GM can adapt the game as they go. Like because a computer cannot abandon its programming, at least not yet. Mm-hmm. It's like that. So of course, there a lot of times as time has gone by, you have very robust games because they're just trying to account for all the different things you could possibly think of, or that you could potentially do that are within reason.
Yeah, like open world versus like linear, storytelling and stuff like that in a video game. Yeah, I got you. Yep. And you said as a GM, yeah, go ahead.
No. Finish your thing.
No. I was done. I was just injecting that little bit of like my understanding to make sure I was on the same page as you, and then I interrupted. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So no, that is actually a thing in role playing games, is that sense of freedom, open worldness, and it depends on the campaign, because of course they're called campaigns because they're so named after miniatures games.
Yeah.
Where, it's like for example, like literal military campaigns being played out across a variety of scenarios. So that's where, just retained that term.
Okay.
But, so over the course of a campaign, of course, as a unit of structure, boils down to a series of scenarios that tie together, in one way or another. But usually it's going to be because it has some or all of the same, PCs. Because you can have a campaign where you have different adventures, different scenarios that aren't particularly related to each other, but the same characters are there, and all the way up until when you decide, either the campaign just dies, because a campaign can die basically because, like, a lot of people that play this stuff are, like, say, in college. People graduate or they change schools, whatever, and so the group just dissolves, so the campaign never really gets finished.
Yeah.
And so, and the thing is that different people will either buy the pre-made stuff or they'll make up their own. It's up to the GM, and me, I'm a guy, like, over 90% of the time I make up my own stuff. Okay. Partially because when you have a module, which is, of course, your scenario pack that, here's the maps, here are the various encounters that you'll have within it, and, here's the greater machine at work. But the thing is there's a lot of planning it takes to build these watches, or at least to build a good one. Mm-hmm. And of course, then players can, in theory, a player can always just abandon it just be like, yeah, we don't want to do that.
Okay.
Like, where it's like, yeah, that dragon, that sounds pretty dangerous. Someone could get hurt. We're gonna go after like this goblin lair we heard about, and then the GM's just like,
yeah, this one-off comment that the GM made like 2 sessions ago. We're like, you know what? We think we're going to go do that first.
Okay.
The GM has like nothing prepared for that, and so they gotta, pull something out of their ass.
Okay.
So, and that's something that's part of being a GM, pulling things out of your ass for a role playing game.
Okay.
And
I'm glad you did the specification right there for a role play game. That's fantastic.
Yes. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, what keeps you motivated when it comes to just playing tabletops in general? I don't know if it's you talked about how you started and how you got into it with the sort of family reunion, and it just sort of it was just whipped up by, I don't know if you said it was your uncle or your cousin, and you were sort of enthralled by that. Why? I mean, how long ago was that? And what keeps you going still? Have you found more depth and breadth in role playing tabletop stuff as you've gone along, or is it just something else that is keeping you going?
So I would say it starts with before I'd ever played that game. I remember one time I'm in.
How long ago was that, by the way? That first game that you played?
That first game was probably. I can't be completely sure. It's been so long, but I would guess somewhere around 1998, 1999, 2000.
Damn. Okay. All right. So late 90s. All right.
Yeah. I was I want to say I was in junior high. I don't think I was in high school yet.
Okay.
So, the thing is, I remember before that, I'd seen books, RPG books that my cousin owned, and I'd flipped through them, and they're kind of neat, but I had no clue what was, what these stat blocks were. I didn't understand that this was a reference material. I didn't, the paradigm.
Yeah, it just looks like a whole lot of complexity that you weren't able to put together or something like that, right?
There's something about complexity. It's more like it was so alien that I didn't even understand what I was looking at.
Yeah.
Because I had also been to, what was it, a long time ago. Well, Lee, do you live in or around Rockford, Mike?
Well, okay. So I don't. Let's not use specific locations and stuff like that. I'm in North Carolina.
I don't give a fuck. But yeah, he's in.
I'm in North Carolina. Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. I wasn't sure, local, but you can edit all this out.
Yeah.
So to make a hard break.
Nope, we're doing it live. No editing. Go ahead.
Okay. But basically, I walked into a Walden Books.
Okay.
A long time ago. And
good old Walden.
Yeah. And in there, maybe check the time code, by the way, for making that edit. And this
one. We're not.
No. It's fine. It's fine.
It's there. I have mentioned Rockford a million times.
Yeah. No,
I don't care.
I should have I kind of should have really thought about that. Oh yeah, his accent. But
yeah,
that's good. But anyways, I walked through the Walden Books. I saw a book for Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. Once again, didn't quite know what that was.
Yeah.
And so it's I just flipped through the book and I saw some monster stat blocks. Once again, It was so alien to me that I didn't really know what I was even looking at.
Yeah.
It was a book. Because when I thought of games, I think of like a board game where you have pieces and you might have a little card or something.
Mm-hmm.
This is nothing like that.
Yeah.
So that's why alien.
Yeah.
And so eventually, having played it, now it's started. Now I had context. I started to understand what those books were about. And then of course I eventually came to play certain RPGs that he owned. And honestly, if there's one thing I think is there's two kinds of role-playing gamers. those who started with D&D and those who didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm one of those who didn't. Yeah, like
although to be fair, Palladium can be pretty adjacent.
Like.
Yeah, it's very close, but it is not.
Okay.
Yeah, but because.
So what was that? So what was that motivation again? You said that.
Oh yeah. So for me, it's this sort of interface you have this creative interface you have with other people.
Yeah.
And this idea, do you understand the concept theater of the mind?
Is it sort of like brainstorming with more than one person?
Sort of. It's like probably the earliest, like for example, when you read a book, you read the word, but you conceive of images in your head of what is actually going on in the book.
Yeah.
Or another tangible is like I like radio or audio dramas.
Okay.
Where it's the same idea where it's all sound, but they still manage to create images in your head. And so roleplay games partially work off of this. Now, granted, you may or may not have miniatures and maps set up. In which case, it kind of offloads some of that. They can be particularly useful in terms of the placement of characters and objects, but so they don't have to convey it. But when you do theater of the mind, where you can kind of picture, like if my character's talking to this character that the GM is describing, I can picture my character standing or sitting in the room with that other one talking to them.
Yeah.
And then once I can accept, okay, I'm in this room, I might start thinking about what's in the room. I'll be looking around. I'll ask the GM questions. And the thing I like about it is the fact that I, the player, can ask these questions, and the GM can respond with something, from their mind. And then it's kind of like improv. It's a little bit like
the real mark of a good GM is they will paint a clear enough picture that that both of you are imagining in the theater of the mind very, very similar things.
Okay.
You end up getting on to like we've had certain games where like some players get what the tone and the setting is supposed to be, and then we've had other games with players where like they don't quite get the tone or the setting, and so we kind of end up getting mixed ideas of what we're actually playing.
Okay.
That's something that we've tried to cultivate in our group, is like everybody trying to be on the same page. And it's not to say that other people aren't allowed to have other ideas of what could be going on. It's just at the end of the day, the more we're all on the same page, the much more smoothly a game will pass.
So the theater, go ahead.
Well, so when you have that theater of the mind, is if the GM, they'll often open up any given, like let's say enter a new room. The GM will often give you at least some basic descriptions, even if there's no map. So then like, okay, there's maybe for example. Here we'll observe.
If I were to say something like if I were the GM, it would be like you're in a square room, everything is white, there are no tangible objects on the floor, and there's a door on the roof, on the ceiling.
Okay.
Sorry, that would be like a really weird description of a room, but you would have like is it like that specific, or like how would you end up doing it?
Yeah, like for example, let's say you tell me that. So, we'll tag team this. I'll start. I'll be like, "Is there a ladder that leads to that roof, or leads to that door?"
No, there's a step stool.
Step stool. All right. Does the step stool allow me to actually reach it?
No.
Okay.
Well,
then, what color is the room?
The room is completely white. It's like marbles. Yeah, it's like marble slate white. Yeah, it'd be like the Matrix construct room. Yeah.
So, in fact, and then I'll be like, okay, so that door up there. Let's say we got the step ladder, and
no, it's a stool.
So, okay, yeah, stool.
Right?
Now, and like you said, it doesn't allow me to reach it. It's not. It's I don't get enough height from that.
Well, here's a better question: does this door swing down towards us, or does it look like it swings up and out?
It's inset into the ceiling.
What he means is, like, if you opened it, would it swing downwards towards us, or
do I see hinges on our side, or do I not see hinges?
You don't see hinges.
Yeah, you don't see hinges. Okay.
Yeah,
So then, all right. Well, then here's a real easy one. Scott, you could easily like kneel on the stool. I can climb up onto you and see if I can reach the handle.
Yep. And does that work?
Yes, it works.
Okay, so he opens it up, and then he can pop his head out of the other side of the door. Then.
Yeah. This is really weird. I don't know what's going on. Then okay.
This is what role playing is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you're getting a little bit of an idea of what being a GM is like. Because
you basically just designed an escape room, and we're trying to solve the escape room.
Oh, okay.
So then, of course, someone might be like, you open up the door. In fact, here I'll put you in the player seat, and then I will demonstrate. I'll take that baton from you, and I'll run with it for a moment. So, we'll just swap, me for you. You're the one who just,
You are the GM.
God. Mike is starting his role-playing experience inside of the construct from the Matrix.
Oh my God, this is a great origin story.
Yeah, so Lee just opened the door, and when you pop your head through, you are in an attic. It is like a musty attic. There's no airflow. It is middle of summer. It is hot. It is sweaty, and it's like a punch to the face when your head emerges up there. You're suddenly very aware of the temperature differential from where you are, in the white room and when you have your head in the attic.
Okay. I'm going to swing the door completely open, and then I'm going to tell you, hey, Scott, I'm going to go up here and scout ahead, and you just sit down here for a minute. I'll be right back. I'm going to climb up onto your shoulders, and then I will hoist myself up into this attic.
Okay.
So then, you see him, climb into the attic, and his feet disappear for a moment. But then, what do you do, Lee?
I look around. Do I see anybody?
Okay. First of all, there's a window. There's a beam of light. It's daytime. And there's dust just passing through that beam of light. I'm sure you're going to look for a door that leads out of this attic.
Is there anybody else up here?
You know what? This is where a lot of times I might have him make a die roll to see if he sees someone. Or I might just tell him if it's not important.
I'll tell you what, I got 3d6 right here. Or I have a d10, whatever you'd like.
We'll do 3d6, and we'll just say if it's... We're going to make this a 50-50 kind of roll, so 10 or less.
Okay. Yeah, I rolled 10.
All right. So when you look, you can see like a pair of sneakers poking out from underneath this, like, kind of these stacks of luggage, this old, like, stowed away luggage.
Okay. I will go investigate.
All right. So you
can I yell at Nightstorm and tell him to put down a ladder so I can get the fuck up into this room?
Sure. So yeah, you hear him, Nightstorm. What happens? What do you do?
Do I see a ladder or other apparatus to get him up here?
Roll 3d6 to rummage about and see if you can find a ladder or some other means of him to climb up. Because you're looking at all this stuff.
Rolled a 13.
13? Yeah, you're looking around, you're probably going to have to reach down there and try to hoist him up.
All right. Yeah, I don't see anything up here. Here, and so I'll lay down and I'll stick my arms down, and I'm like, you just use my arms and just climb up here.
Okay. I'm gonna grab your arm and jump up there. Use some momentum.
See, and this is where I might be like, well, let's see if you're strong enough to actually pull him up, and let's see if you're strong enough to hold on to him and get up there.
Okay.
So I might have both of you roll 3d6, and for these purposes, Lee, you roll 3d6 for both of you, because unless you have 3d6, Mike.
No, I don't have anything like that now.
Okay. All right. So go ahead, Lee.
You should rate a board game. That's what I used to do. I remember a long time ago, I rated my Lord of the Rings Monopoly set for some D6s.
Okay.
I was gonna say, I mean, an easier source of D6 is just get a Yahtzee set from your local pharmacy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Easily done. You're going as man.
I rolled a 6.
All right. We'll say that was for you. Roll 3d6 for Mike.
Okay. I rolled a 9.
All right. So I was going to just make it, once again, just 10 or less for both of you. So you both made it. So yeah, Lee really, jerks you up there, and, you just, land and, get on your feet, and, you see the, the sneakers, from.
Yeah, I'll point them out. Yep.
Okay. All right. So I'm seeing how things can unfold and develop and stuff like that. Okay.
Yeah, and that's you got a taste of being a player, got a taste of being the GM, and so we see how it was just you're asking questions, you're just thinking, it's like, if I were here in this scenario, this is one of the things I would think to do. I would ask if I can do it, and then the GM, thinks okay, given what I know or am conjuring up in this scenario, according to the rules, is it allowed? According to the scenario, does it make sense if they can do that? For example, when you establish that the door was too high for me to reach, I can't just, unless there's something on my character sheet, something about my character that says otherwise, I can't just be like, well, I'm just going to reach up like a Michael Jordan towards the end of Space Jam, and my hands just reach the edge anyways. It's like, you'll just be like, no.
Okay.
Yeah. But it's like, but the fact that I just put that image in your head, it's also part of role-playing games. And so one of the things that keeps me motivated is that when you play a video game, you shell out, your, however much money, because obviously nowadays you have a lot more of an independency, and you have, online, stores like Steam and others that are proprietary, that prices can vary quite wildly nowadays. But generally they're like, I'm going to shell out $60, $70, $80 or whatever, or $40 or whatever. And that's for probably for this year of that game. I might buy other games. Mm-hmm. With a role-playing game, if I do D&D, I might ride off of this $90 for the next 10 years.
Okay.
I could get other supplements, most certainly. That's what they try to do is they sell you supplements and new source books, new modules. Yeah. And then gives you more content to work with, more classes, more magic items, more more class features, whatever.
Yeah, more stuff. Yeah,
more stuff. And then it's like when you do that, your characters, you as a, let me rephrase all this. I go back to the beginning. So when you ride off of that, just that initial investment, in the long term, it was very economical, because at one point I was into card games.
Yeah.
In high school, and I had fun, but I remember, my card gaming buddy and we eventually were kind of, doing a little cost-benefit analysis on a teenage level, but we were just realizing, wait, like, if we have to keep buying booster packs. Now, this is before we thought the idea, hey, wait, you're not using those cards, I'm not using these cards, why don't we just share? But but still, you do reach the same conclusion. That it's like, this is just a never-ending mill of, I'm paying like $3-4 a pop, but eventually I'm going to be buying like 20 or something, and you're buying 20. We both just sunk, $60-80 each, $120, $160 into this thing until the next set comes out.
Yeah.
And then we do it again. Whereas like D&D, for example, it'll cost us like $90 to get the core 3 books, and we could just stop there. But let's say a new expansion comes out in like 3, 4, 6 months, that'll be like another $20-30. And we have hours of entertainment from that. So there's also just a sheer frugality element to it. And once again, there's that creativity, because one of the elements of role-playing game character construction is combinatorics.
Yeah.
Which you get that with miniatures games. You get that with card games, where you're building a deck, you're building an army. But when you're building a deck, you have to get those individual cards, and when you're building an army, you have to get those miniatures. With a character sheet, I just need to go and get some paper and a pencil. And then I just have to roll some dice and then make some choices, and I have this character. I have that character. I can generate, probably an ungodly amount that's technically larger than the size of the universe, in terms of how many characters I can actually generate. Granted, most of them will be shit, but that's not the point. It's Sturgeon's law. But it's like there's that cost benefit. There's the cost benefit analysis of role playing games. They're very frugal, and then you have that. You can pour your creativity into building a character, and not only that, but some games you roll up characters, others you buy, and pick things. You don't roll randomly, but you can interpret what things mean. Like for example, like maybe my character has like a low strength score. Maybe it's because my character is a child. Okay. Like they're not strong because they're not even fully grown. Maybe it's because they're old and whatnot. Like they don't have their strength as they were. Maybe maybe I might decide like, okay, maybe my character's like this, a total weenie, or maybe they're sickly. Maybe this character, has like something debilitating them. There could be all kinds of reasons why they have low strength. Same goes for high strength. And so, like I said, you can interpret too every stat and anything you rolled. You can interpret like your class features. You can also do things like this is something we don't really see a lot in our own games. Yeah. But on it, well, sort of. There is a different game that runs off of what I'm about to tell you. But let's say like one of the most classic, spells you can ever cast in D&D is Fireball. Okay. But you played enough role-playing games. Who says like role-playing games on like Western or Japanese? I'm sure. Yeah. Or at least you're familiar enough with them. Yeah. Well, yeah, it's the Fireball. It does an area of effect. Damage. It does fire damage. What if it did acid damage instead? It's otherwise the exact same build. Yeah. And so on and so forth. Frost damage, wind damage. It does force damage. You could do that, and if the GM allows it, it's like, I'm not. It's called Melf's acid arrow. What if it was a fire arrow I was firing instead? It does the same damage, but it's fire damage. This could be important because maybe there's monsters that they don't take fire, or I should say they're resistant to fire damage. They're resistant to acid damage. Or alternatively, they've got a bunch of resistances. Fire's not one of them. Okay. And I just happened to talk my GM into letting me be fire instead.
So basically, so just to I'm just trying to put everything together in my head. So basically, it's not just like the theater of the mind. It's not just like, the sort of like frugality of like the entire venture of like getting into tabletop stuff. It's also like there's sort of like infinite level of like combinations that exist that doesn't normally exist with like purchased video games, because there are like constraints and there's limitations associated with like developing something that we end up playing on the computer, right?
That is most definitely part of it.
Yeah. Okay.
So to put it very succinctly, like when we're playing a game, we typically take nowadays most of our games revolve around like we're really into this one thing, let's lean into it and like build something around that. Whereas if we've got let's say like a really specific thing we want to play, like let's say we wanted to play Marvel, we could go buy the Marvel tabletop role-playing game, or we could use a different role-playing game and just say it's Marvel. You can just file off the names and replace them, because at the end of the day, like any rule system that Lord Fresh might use or buy, you can just take those rules, and as a GM, you can just incorporate anything you like from one book into another book, and you can mix and match, and that's where the complexity of being a GM comes into play. Is like I'm going to take all these things, I'm going to let you all know before we start playing, like, hey, these are the systems I'm using, this is what I'm changing. You know, that's where the house ruling. It's kind of like modding a video game.
Yeah.
Where it's like, you know, maybe this thing, this part of this this game we've been playing, this is clearly busted. Mm-hmm. So it's like, why don't we adjust that a little bit, because otherwise everybody would be doing it, and then, you know, nobody's going to have fun because we're all stuck on this one thing that is really, really good.
So just playing off of like the thing that's busted and the thing, and sort of like, I guess you could say like it's sort of like modding a video game comment. Like, what do you guys hate and like love about it? Like, are there aspects of it that you wish you could get rid of that you can't because it's like inherent in the system? Or like, I guess you could say on the opposite side of that, are there things that only exist within tabletop games that don't exist anywhere else that keeps you coming back?
I would say one of the things that only exists, well, mostly only exists in tabletop role-playing games, is when you once in a while in a campaign, you'll have a certain synergy between the characters that can be mechanical, where you work very well as a unit. That part exists in just about anything, you know. Because obviously, if you play any video game where you have teamwork, you're kind of trying to do that.
Yeah.
You're kind of trying to do that in team sports in real life.
Yeah, basically.
And other things. But in role-playing games, if you have the right composition of characters with the right kinds of, you know, their personalities, their behaviors, their psychologies, mm-hmm. their backgrounds. Like, once in a while, a campaign comes along where you have this utter, this like that kind of a synergy. Yeah, it's lightning. It can be. I wouldn't precisely call it lightning in the bottle, but it does feel like this campaign has a little bit of kismet to it.
Okay.
Well, the reason why I use the term lightning storm is because it's like the whole series of games, however long it lasts, feels like it's all lightning in the bottle. The whole thing.
Like,
here's is just a culmination of like all of us clicking constantly on what we're doing.
It's like, let's say you're watching a TV show,
mm-hmm.
and you know, all the greats, you know, usually a lot of TV shows don't quite hit the ground running per se.
Mm-hmm.
It's more like they hit a stride eventually.
Yeah.
Because usually it takes a few episodes at least for them to really figure out the characters, and then they they hit upon this thing, they hit upon this watershed moment, and the thing starts to come together, and then you get caught up in this stretch. It could last for seasons, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, it's like, you're just like, oh my God, I can't wait to get to next week to see what happens next and everything.
Yeah.
Or what's the next adventure.
Yeah.
And role-playing games, because of that narrative element that they have, they can achieve that, which is pretty much wholly unique to it from any other game format, because, like, when you're playing a video game, you just, well, keep playing. Whatnot. You don't wait. You don't wait till next week. You don't speculate anything. You just eventually you're just like, well, I gotta go to bed. Then tomorrow I return to it.
Yeah.
Whereas with a role playing game, there's this, once again, when you name any video game and somebody else played the same game, more or less. Role playing games, generally any war stories you share, and generally speaking, don't do this unsolicited.
Okay.
But anyways, when you share your role-playing game stories, you're going to have almost entirely unique ones from other people, except for those who are there at the same game. Including when you run the same module, because people can make such radically different decisions from each other that it just, everything spirals out from that. Everything is downstream from each unique decision.
Yeah.
So it's that thing. It's the shared experience, the shared creative experience. And we say creative in both the sense of narrative and in the sense of tactics.
Yeah.
And so, because you'll have this group of characters that have these personalities, these backgrounds, these behaviors that they are bound to. Because of the construction of their character, and so they'll do things this way. Whereas and then if you have a GM that's crafting unique scenarios for their group, then that just piles on the uniqueness of it. Where it's like, when we turn on a TV show or watch a movie series that has continuing characters and stuff, or you play a long-running video game or a video game series. There's a degree that things are shared across thousands or millions of people. People can only in particular the single player mode stuff.
Yeah.
On the other hand, that's why video games like to do multiplayer stuff, because
there's variability.
That's the part. Exactly. It's every game is there's going to be when you zoom out, it's the same shit, but it was the individual time where. This is how things piled up. And you're up against these guys you might never meet again on this server.
Yeah.
And role-playing games have that quality, but it also has the narrative quality that comes from that, too.
Okay. So there's some depth to that variability. Go ahead. Go ahead, Nightstorm.
It's also when you play a number of different games with the same group of people or a similar group of people, because some people come, some people go, over a number of years or decades. In our case, you develop certain tendencies, and you get to rely in their. Excuse me. You get to rely on your fellow man, and these people are your friends, presumably at the table with you.
Yeah.
So you get to have this shared, really bonding experience where it's we survived that. We were able to come through that adventure together because we relied on each other, and it's very intimate. It's a really great way of trust building and really testing your own boundaries as how far can I push this? How far can I not push this? Is this going to work? Last night or the night before. Wait, was Saturday yesterday? Holy shit! I'm sorry. on Saturday night, we were on the wire, and we were thinking about it in hindsight that my character in particular, my character's young. He's a little bit naive, and he was kind of a little bit afraid to go balls in to fight the enemy, and so that hurt us because I wasn't in the fight immediately. But like that's what my character would do. Like I can't be hyper aggressive with that character yet. Like that's not who he is. And so like having those developments in your character, and even through the course of a fight, like DBZ, where like there's a lot of good narration and a lot of good character building inside of a fight, that like you don't like, not just because it's a role-playing game and you might be having a fighting encounter in a role-playing game doesn't mean it's all about fighting at that moment. You can inject some role-playing into it, or vice versa. You can do the same thing when you're out of combat, whereas like there's some conflict coming from like other like wordplay, or like trying to deceive somebody or play mind, like there's many different ways to have quote unquote conflict. And so all of that really culminates into this very unique experience that like some really good video games might be able to pull some of that off, but at the end of the day, like all good games are done. And like, while like we've never had a scenario or had a game run indefinitely forever, we have had a few games where like they're just consistently great, and people every single time they're being run, they're always looked forward to. They're always remembered fondly for one reason or another. There are some short-lived games that are remembered fondly, even though they were terrible. But that's some of the magic about all of that.
Yeah. Okay. So it's like all of this, along with the fact that like this sort of like click that people can get into, where everybody's like mind energy is like synergetic, and people can just like go into this sort of like flow mode and create this sort of unique story with all of these role-playing elements associated with it. Okay.
You want to talk about flow? One of the things I remember, there's a book about game mastering with various articles, and there was one that it's always stuck with me because it's one of the things that I had noticed before, but now it's one of those things where every once in a while, this will happen when you're a GM, because you know how like you're at we were going back and forth, right?
Yeah.
What, earlier?
Yeah.
Once in a while, when you have enough players, you might have a scenario where the players, I forget the exact wording of how the article writer said it, but he basically said, once in a while, you'll kind of look up and you'll notice something, that the players are playing the game without you. Like the game is just running itself.
Yeah.
And people are in the shared headspace, and like you said, like it's basically, that's about as close to flow state as a role-play game gets, where the GM can just sit back and it's running itself. You've rubbed the sticks together enough, and now the fire is burning and consuming the wood.
When you get to a certain point where theater of the mind is all of us in the same headspace acting on a stage, and the GM ends up being the audience, and he gets to watch it as he's pushed all these levers and turned all these knobs, and he gets to sit back for a little bit and watch this scene unfold, for good or for ill, as like just this beautiful thing ends up happening.
So there's a sort of like there's a sort of like critical mass associated with this, or a critical point that you have to pass over in order to get to this like flow mode. And once you get into the groove, I guess you could say, everything just sort of works in a sort of magical way. Okay. What were we going to say?
Yeah, I can't, at least personally, from playing over 20 years, of role-playing games, I can't tell you how to, formulaically engineer this effect. It just happens when it happens, and it doesn't happen every session. It might not happen. You might not see it for a whole year, or it might go years without it. Because in role-playing games, if one is into them, to me, I'll put it this way: it is a bit of an exaggeration, but like 80% of the time, there's nothing to really write home about. Mm-hmm. It's just you played, you know. There's like a good 16% that's like this is memorable. That was really good, and then there's this like 4% that's pure heroin.
Okay.
And like you will chase that dragon just to get that.
You'll chase that magic dragon.
Yeah, exactly. You will chase that magic dragon just to feel that one more time. Okay. If you felt it before, you know it. What is it? It's it.
So what about? I mean, y'all just talked about like all the stuff that you love about it. Like what? I mean, you don't have to like, because I guess it could be like controversial or like it could poke at the wrong thing. But like, what do you guys like hate about it? Like, are there like things that you like instant like for like. Like, what's the antithesis of this sort of, like, instance of, like, chasing the magic dragon? Games go back? Yeah.
Yeah, so, okay, well, let's see, where do we begin? So, the first thing that is probably the biggest, I guess I'll just say it's a limitation. Well, probably the greatest limitation of role-playing games is that everything ultimately goes through the GM. Mm-hmm. The GM is the referee. The GM is the one who gives the go ahead that this happens. Mm-hmm. So that means things can be. A game can often be only as good as the quality of the GM.
Okay.
Not everything rests on the GM. Okay. If you could have a good GM and all the players are rotten for different reasons, and you'll have a bad game, and it's not the GM's fault. But because the GM is the one that's gained the most attention, is gained the most, is the one dispensing the most information, is the one that's handling the whole thing, a lot of it does rest on the GM. So that's the starter. So it's like, that's the programming of the game, is the GM on some level. The game rules are the programming. The GM is,
the GM has to be first gear. If the GM can't get into the game they're running, it's very difficult. No matter how, like it could be Marvel, it could be DC based. If the GM is his heart is not into running the game, it's very hard to be enthusiastic about a game.
So what's another thing, Nightstorm?
So. For me, the number one thing is a combination. It's people side. It's scheduling.
Yes.
Trying to get it's not just even enough people. It's enough people who are enthusiastic about the game, because you'll get some player, and there's nothing wrong. Not everybody has to be fully 100% committed to every single game. A lot of people can be I'm 75% into this, and then you've got people that are 110% invested in it. You have to have a high enough percentage of people who are genuinely and enthusiastic about playing, because if you have one guy who's only 20% into playing the game, and you've got two people who let's say you have another who's 75 and another who's 100, that one guy who's 20 might end up dragging down the other two people, and you might have a lower quality game because the other person is not acting in a way that's in accordance to if they're not even putting forth the effort to
they're applying friction into the entire equation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But the other one is when players actively try to sabotage a game, where because of whatever reason they're going through, maybe they bring outside drama into the game, or they're under the influence of something else, or whatever the case may be. They end up letting themselves get lost in another sauce, and then they actively, whether intentional or not, they actively sabotage not just the GM's plans, but the fun and the vibe of the party. Like,
yeah.
So it's like super interesting that both of you said something, and neither one of it had to do with like years experience. Like it was like it has nothing to do with being a newbie or not. It has to do with like.
No, we've had people who are brand new who like, man, dude, they inject fresh blood into it, and they come into things from an aspect of like they don't know what the fuck's going on, so they just throw things at the wall, just trying. And like we remember being there, although most of us were like quite a bit younger. It's interesting to watch a new player inject that fresh bit of life into a game because. Like they add something that like we can't add that anymore. That is something that we are incapable of adding to our role playing experience.
Here's the way to look at it. Like when you get a new video game, right? Especially if it's something you've never played before in any fashion, there's a kind of honeymoon phase where you're just you're seeing all the great graphics and you're seeing like all the cool things your character can do and the abilities they gain and the whatever it is that you do in the game. But as you play it longer and longer, you start to actually more engage with the actual mechanics of the game.
Yeah.
Like, for example, there's people that play Smash Bros. And there's like, I'm just going to pick this guy or I'm going to pick that guy. But then eventually you play a fighting game long enough, you start to think, okay, who has the bigger hitboxes? Who has the better reach? Who has, you're starting to like get to the details.
Yeah, you're thinking about the gameplay on a different level. Yeah, I got you.
Exactly. And role-playing games are no different, where you're just like, there's the initial thing where you're just like, can I do this? And the GM rolls with you usually. They say, yeah, you can do that. Or they'll say, well, no, you can't really do that. You're not that kind of class. But it's like you're like, okay, yeah, I'll just try this instead. And you just roll the dice when they tell you, and you start to learn the math. But as you engage with it, now that said, there can be a deeper kind of fun engaging on that level with a game, but now you start to have opinions, which means you can have negative opinions about things, and you start to realize, okay, this is actually not good. This is pretty bad.
You're sort of like theater of the mind can become too narrow.
It's not really so much about that, so much as, like, I mean, with the theater of the mind, that part doesn't really change.
Okay.
Although, like, it would be a thing where when you're interfacing with when you're playing with different GMs, sometimes what can happen is you can have games where not everybody's on the same page as to what for example, let's say you're playing Dungeons and Dragons. Let's say you're playing, like, 1970s, early 80s D&D. You're pretty like there used to be literal Dungeons and Dragons competition because there was an objective to the game. There were objectives to the modules.
Yeah.
They were not just as the GM applies stuff like you're like who can make it out with the most treasure or something.
Yeah.
But let's say though somebody just decides like, here's a cliche of sorts. But let's say, our characters. Well, your character can't travel all day; they gotta sleep. Yeah. So, they set up camp and they sleep, and maybe we'll put this guy on night watch, and he's like, well, I'm a thief, so I'm gonna start stealing their stuff and not tell them. Where it's like, bro.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. It's just like not vibing. Yeah, I got you.
Then it gets even worse when someone's like bears a grudge on another player, so they decide they're going to have their character attack that other character in game. And,
I mean, sometimes that ends up like you can manipulate certain situations into being entertaining and like fun. In the right circumstances, but in the long term, that never works out.
Yeah, or for that matter, yeah. Like, let's say you have a game where we agreed that we are playing. I don't know. Okay, here, I'll bring this to like schoolyard level. Okay, we're playing Cowboys and Indians, right?
Okay.
And this guy comes in saying like, I'm a ninja.
Okay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
It's like, once again, no, you're not. And of course you'll have people that will, try to build these characters. Is like, that's not what this game is, dude. So you often, this is why a wise thing to do is to have a social contract to your game to establish, like, okay, this is what the campaign is versus what it is not. And we're going to maybe, like if we're going to play more Hammer 40K, that has a certain tone, does it not? Like,
Yeah.
It's like you have an idea of what it should feel like, and therefore what kind of decisions characters should make, and what kind of events and consequences, and what kind of threats you should be expecting.
Yeah.
But so if somebody comes into that game trying to play it like it's Candyland, okay, that's a bad example for Lee's case. Let's say you come in there thinking, oh, I'm gonna, we're gonna run this like it's Star Trek.
Okay.
Right? Where it's like it's an optimistic, view of the future, and it's like, which is pretty much the opposite of fucking 40K.
Yeah, it's the exact opposite.
And the opposite too. Where it's just like, we're playing this Star Trek game, and this guy comes in acting like, he's going to be, freaking, like he's going to be an Adeptus Astartes, where it's like, this is Star Trek, bro.
Yeah.
And for that matter, we're Federation. I mean, I guess you could kind of try to do that if you're a Klingon, but this is a Federation ship. Like, why would we just have a bloodthirsty Klingon on our ship?
Yeah.
And so you got to get on the same terms as each other.
We've gotten to the point where we always have some form of social contract, just so and like usually I would say it's 50-50. Like the GM has about 50% of the power with the social contract, and then the players collectively have about 50. Like at the end of the day, the GM can be like, no, I'm not going to run it this way. We're definitely not going to have that kind of a rule.
Mm-hmm.
But there always needs to be some level of give and take, because we're all fucking playing this game together.
Yeah, negotiate. As to what you all can agree to, because
we're all fucking adults. We can,
Yeah. So, when you do role playing games, when you're coming up with a new campaign, you kind of agree that. Now that said, let's say it's a published setting. It's a published campaign world. Like in D&D, you have things like the Forgotten Realms. You have Dragonlance. You have Ravenloft. You have Dark Sun. Each of these has their own aesthetics. They have their own tone. They carry with them a lot of particular expectations that if someone would either just read the book, or alternatively, if the GM could summarize it for the players to understand, then that can cut out a lot of that process right there, because it's right there in the book for you to look at. But but other things though that I wouldn't say hate, but I would say it's a limitation of the game, to bring it back around to that. Role-playing games have to work in linear time. This mostly is a matter of, like, when you get to combat, right? Mm-hmm. And combat is usually one of the most mechanically intensive parts of role-playing games, because people want things to be fair.
Yeah.
Because if I'm going to die, I want to die and it was fair.
Yeah. It needs to make sense. You don't need to. You don't want to feel gypped. Yeah.
Exactly. Where the GM's just like, oh, and you're dead.
Yeah.
That said, there are role-playing games that do have certain rules for that, where it's like, no, you're just dead. And it's like, but if you agree to it,
and sometimes that's okay.
Yeah, and there's times where it's just like, yeah, you fucking fell, reached terminal velocity, and you just hit solid concrete. There is nothing breaking your fall.
I mean, you reach terminal velocity, you fall onto water, you're done.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you're just a normal guy. You're not like this over the top, cinematic hero. You're not this hero of myth and legend. You're not some superhero. You're just a guy. Yeah, you're dead. We're not gonna roll.
Yeah.
But there's other GMs where it's like, no, we're gonna roll. We're gonna do damage, and then in roleplay games you can be like, oh my god, I rolled almost minimum damage. What the fuck? And the guy's like, well, I'm gonna get back up there and be like, whoo.
That's awesome.
It would not. But it depends on the game. But the thing is that like I said, it's linear, which means like if it takes time to look at the board, or look at the game state, whatever it is, or assess the situation. You should be doing this when it's not your own turn, mind you. You pay attention to what other people are doing, so then you have a good idea of where to go from there. But that still takes a little bit of time for you to actually figure out, all the information since your last turn, what you should do from here. Yeah. And then you say, okay, I want to do this.
I know what okay, yeah.
And then you have to make calculations a lot of times, like, to your attack roll. The GM might help you. You have to roll the dice, and then, the GM determines if you hit. Then you have to roll damage. You have to add up the damage. And then there can be all these little things they have to do. That takes time for you to take your turn. When you play a video game, though, you have a central, calculation hub. Yeah. So it's like you can run around and your friends can run around and you're all throwing your attacks. You're all doing it at the same time. It's it's from a resolution standpoint, video games are non-linear. Whereas a roleplay game very much is. So it's like you have to go one turn at a time.
Oh yeah. You were saying linear and non-linear. Okay, you mean like single-threaded as opposed to like I don't know. I guess you could say like running in parallel, because it's definitely it's definitely, it doesn't seem like it's a linear thing, because you can go in so many different directions based off of what you and Nightstorm have explained. But like the process is the process is like single threaded. Yeah, it goes like one instruction after another. Okay.
Yeah, because it's Nightstorm's action. He's going to take his action. I can't do anything because it's not my action. It's not my turn. Then when it's my turn, he has to wait. Now, if we only have like 2 or 3 people, that's usually not a big deal. But when you have like 5 players and they're up against 5, 6 monsters, the biggest we ever had was like 10 to 11, something like that, and a GM. It was something. It was unreal. And so you could wait like over an hour before it got back around to you.
Holy shit.
To take your action. And it's like, and nobody's, generally nobody's acting slowly either. Like, let's say, for example, there's 5 players. And let's say it takes you about 1 minute to declare your action, make whatever rolls you have to do, and then, move on to the next player. Let's say it takes you about a minute and a half. If there's 5 players, first of all, between the players, 5 times 1.5, you're going to have about, 7.5 minutes. Like I said, on average, because sometimes the player just be like, yeah, I can't do anything, pass, next guy, and then it's already done. But then the GM has like monsters, enemies, etc. that they have to resolve too, which will often double whatever is going on. So it might take like 15 minutes to get back around to your next action.
Okay.
Which isn't that bad, frankly, as opposed to like, what if it takes like 2 minutes to do it? Now it's like 2 times.
Imagine if you have a player who consistently is taking 5 to 10 minutes.
Yes.
Yeah, that could definitely mess up the vibe. Yeah, I could definitely imagine that fucking shit up. Is it? Have y'all like noticed like a massive change in like the way that you perceive like other tabletop games, books, movies, like video games, storytelling in general since? And I'm just gonna make this like the wrap up question, because we've actually been talking for like an hour and a half. Since y'all have like started playing tabletop games, like have you noticed a difference, or is it still like does it still feel like no, they're distinct? I don't really notice anything else, or do you like pick little things apart about like a story? Like I have a tendency of doing that. Like I went to college for like physics and economics. And I like constantly bitch about things like not being logically consistent, or like not making sense, or not being like physically accurate or something like that whenever I watch like some TV show or something like that. Is there like a similar storytelling ish that y'all end up being like attached to whenever y'all see something on television or in movies or video games or whatever?
Oh, I'll let you go first, Nightstorm. I'm sure I'll have far more to say.
So for me personally, as I've grown and evolved as a player, I've known, like, for our group and our games in particular, I would say it depends on the game. Like, there are certain GMs who are very good at, like, let's say, like, the summer blockbuster, where, like, they're really good. Don't look too closely. There's going to be some plot holes, but, like, it's generally, like, a really fun, great time.
Yeah.
There are other people who GM who are very, like, nitpicky, very, like, by the book, very, like, these are the numbers, these are the facts, this is what's happening, blah, blah. And then there's GMs who, and this is what I prefer at the end of the day, where, like, we set out the things in the social contract on what this is about, and then, like, they're very good at, like, adjusting, like, the course of the road. And, like, there might be a little thing here or there that isn't fully consistent, but they don't, unless you're, like, trying to look for issues, like, it's really great to, like, it'll fix the whole flow of continuing games. Because even though there might be a small bug here or there, it doesn't detract from the overall experience. If that makes sense.
So as far as when I, play other games, or consume other media, so yeah, you mentioned economics. With D&D, something that sometimes tickles my tism a little bit. No, I don't actually have autism. It's just something I think I say. Yeah. But something that tickles my tism is 10 copper pieces to one. Silver piece? 10 silver pieces to one gold piece. 10 gold pieces to one platinum piece. That's not how the real world works. Not even close. It's a thing where it's simplified for gaming purposes. It's not realistic to how market forces would actually determine how how monetary metals would actually, pan out, etc. But as an example, same goes for when you do, for example, a lot of times, I don't think I've ever seen a role-playing game that makes a distinction between strength and power. Oh. It's just simply, basically, if you're this strong, then you do this much damage. I've never seen a role-playing game that actually accounts for the fact that you can have someone have far more athletic drive out of proportion to their strength. Or the opposite, where it's like, yeah, this guy can lift tremendous amount of strength. He is not fit to be a boxer.
Yeah.
And so it's little things like that. Or, and a lot of times it's because, we could, at the end of the day, role-playing games should not be a completely real-life simulator. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a degree where you try to be reasonably, enough, but you have to remember it's still a game. Real life is not a game. There's things that are absolutely busted in real life.
There definitely are. But I was thinking more of like with the attention to detail that y'all have like honed into like playing role playing for so long. Like say for example, if there was some sort of like logical inconsistency with like something that exists in Robotech. Or like if like mechs like all of a sudden had like some super duper ammo that worked differently, and it was just like outside the boundaries of like how things normally operated. Like in normal storytelling, that sort of like what's the best way to call it? Like that Deus Ex Machina ammo. I don't know. Like that sort of like bullshit pops up a lot, and I'm just curious about whether or not that's something that y'all end up noticing.
We've had that, like, not a zero amount of time, but those people don't GM very often anymore, so it's not really much of an issue. And other than that, like, as like our GMs, our main 3 GMs have like really evolved and really honed their skills. like they have done those kinds of things less and less because we adhere to like pretty solid mechanics usually.
Okay.
Yeah, because like when because I honestly have used my GMing because of different campaigns I've run. I've used them as kind of a springboard for dabbling and learning about various subjects.
Okay.
And so
good reason to do that.
Yeah, so for example, I might read about something from mythology, like actual mythology, not from the game books.
Yeah.
I might read about, this little, subject here. In fact, there's a concept in role-playing games I've recently learned about called invisible source books. The idea basically being, like, take a bit of expertise that you have, and do you really need a guy to publish a source book for that role-playing game on that subject if you yourself already know it? No. Right. So, like, imagine if you have what you know, you have what your friends know, and if as long as you trust each other, there's a lot of source books of knowledge you all have collectively that you don't need you don't need a role-playing book to tell you anything about it.
Yeah.
And it's like that's a concept within role-playing games that if you learn how to harness that, because here's the thing about if you know what you're doing, what's the last movie you watched or the last TV show you watched?
I think it was actually Iron Man 2.
Okay, Iron Man 2. Let's say you decide, you know what? I want to run an Iron Man game. I want to run an MCU style Iron Man game.
Okay.
And it's like you can just be like, just watch the movies. That's your source material. How do things work in these movies? And you take that as your basis of the game, and then you work from that. Like for example, this is a world where a man can build he could take a tank shell and whatnot.
Yeah.
To the face. And he can shoot a tank and blow it up with the whole thing with his own ammo. He can fly around. And he has he can get banged up while in it and all that.
Yeah.
And it's like there's all these things that you could just accept because that's how it works in here, and you just you accept how reality works in Iron Man 2 as well as in by extension the other Iron Man movies, and by further extension the MCU. You accept this is how things work, and you can work that into a role playing game. Like especially if you're like, let's say this is what the rules technically say. The GM might be like, well, like when you watch Iron Man 3, for instance, there's a lot of parts where Tony does not have the entire armor, and he takes lots of bumps that, quite frankly, should have just crippled him and killed him.
Yeah.
But superheroes, fuck it.
Yeah, superheroes, input, Deus Ex Machina, super regenerative, robustness body part, I don't know.
So there's kind of a curve where in the beginning you're just like, oh, I want to play Iron Man. Then you get to like this hump where you're just like looking at all the physics of why this wouldn't work, and you'll get the how the game rules work and wherever you're trying to use it in. And there's a degree where you might think, okay, well, I could try to find the best rule system for this. But beyond that, you're still might be nitpicking all the nerding out over the actual physics of this, and then realizing, yeah, that's great and all, but I watched Iron Man 2, and yes, he did have a self-propulsive suit of power armor that has basically no room for an actual fuel source.
Yeah.
And so it worked in the movie. Why can't I do it in your game that's supposed to be about it?
Yeah.
So you get to the other side, and you learn to accept what things as they are.
Yeah.
Another good thing is like, and also there are some games we play where like we use the tabletop BattleTech game while we're in our mechs in our BattleTech game, but because there aren't good rules in that system for out of mech combat, we use a whole different game called Savage Worlds for our out of mech encounters. And there is a light amount of crossplay between the two, where it's like there are some skills and like very specific circumstances where your Savage World sheet matters to the tabletop sheet, but it's very, like we have very minimal crossover, but because one works better for one situation than the other, we use what's existing instead of trying to make our own thing whole cloth. But obviously Savage Worlds was not designed for BattleTech, so we've had to make our a few little things here and there for BattleTech.
Okay. So you've like modded like out of mech combat to be like, okay, cool.
So we can actually role play.
Yeah.
Because we're not just here for the mech fights, although we are like, I would say like 65% here for the mech fights.
Yeah, yeah. Otherwise, why pick BattleTech? Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, I don't want to. I feel like we could just like keep talking, but it's already been like
keep going. Yeah,
it's already been like an hour and 40.
We can totally have Lord Fresh on again some other time. There's a few other concepts and some other whole other topics I would love for him and you to chew the fat over. So
yeah,
really.
Yeah, well, it's been real, GettoFab. Nice having you on the show, and I don't know. I normally post it like the day after, so I'm probably just going to upload it tonight, and like you'll probably see it tomorrow. And I could post a link somewhere if you really want to see it and you want to share it to some people. Shameless plug. But to everybody else in the chat that are riveted, all one of you, be cool, stay in school, brush your teeth, wash your face. If you want to see the entire stream from the very beginning, you can always go to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/MikeCoolKid. Nightstorm, you got any socials you want to plug?
Posted coming soon.
What's the channel name?
Nightstorm Gaming.
Okay, youtube.com/Nightstorm Gaming. Like and subscribe. Ain't shit going on, but do it anyway. GettoFab, you got anything you want to shout out?
No, not this moment, no.
Okay. All right, man. Well, it's been cool. Be awesome, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll see you all next time on Dragon Ball Z. No, okay. All right, later.
Later.